Hello fellow true crime addicts, my name is Morgana Rose and welcome to my channel. Recently I seem to be doing cases that I can relate to in one way or another, and today's case is no different. It comes from Texas, specifically Clear Lake, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston to the southeast. This is the heartbreaking story of a mom suffering postpartum depression so severe that she drowned her 5 children in a bathtub. Her name is Andrea Yates, and she was married to Rusty Yates, and together they had 5 children: Noah, John, Paul, Luke, and Mary. This is a very involved, long story, so grab your beverage of choice, mine's always a sweet tea, and let's settle in and get comfy. Andrea was born on July 2nd, 1964 in Houston. She was the youngest of 5. She graduated as valedictorian in 1982, and she was captain of the swim team and an officer in National Honor Society. She completed a 2-year pre-nursing program at the University of Houston, and then she graduated from the University of Texas School of Nursing in 1986. She worked as a RN at MD Anderson Cancer Center from 1986 to 1994. She met Rusty when they were both 25 years old, and they were both living in the same apartment complex. They eventually moved in together and spent a lot of their time together in prayer and religious study. They were married on April 17, 1993, and announced to guests that they plan on having as many children as nature allowed. So their first child, Noah, was born on February 6, 1994. Their second son, John, was born the following year on December 15, 1995. After the birth of their second child, John, was born, Andrea stopped doing the things she previously enjoyed, like jogging and swimming, and some of her friends say that she had become somewhat reclusive. Now I know that after the birth of my second child, I could have been called reclusive as well. I was exhausted all the time, and all the energy that I had left after I worked all day was revolving around my kids and running my home. I didn't even contemplate exercise at that point, because it was either exercise while the kids were sleeping or sleep while the kids were sleeping, and I typically chose sleep. But unlike Andrea, I worked outside of the home. Andrea and Rusty made the decision for her to stay home, be a stay-at-home mom, take care of the kids, and homeschool their children. Now at this time in 1996, Rusty took a job in Florida, so they moved into a 38-foot travel trailer. Their third son, Paul, was born on September 13, 1997. In 1997, they returned to the Houston area, and they lived in their travel trailer because Rusty wanted to live light, and their stuff was already in storage from when they moved away, so it just made sense. The next year, Rusty purchased a 350 square foot renovated bus, which he purchased from Michael Warrenecki. Now, like I said this earlier, Rusty and Andrea were very religious, and religion was an integral part of their lives and their relationship. Rusty lived by the teachings of Michael Warrenecki, in whom he met while he attended Auburn College. Michael Warrenecki is an independent, non-denominational Christian missionary. Rusty and Andrea embraced Warrenecki as their spiritual guide, and they listened closely to his teachings of living free of material things. And this is why they sold their house and they moved into a travel trailer, and then eventually into Warrenecki's renovated bus. Warrenecki's beliefs were very rigid. For example, women were to be subservient to men, women should not work outside of the home, and he also preached that bad mothers who are bound for hell create bad children who also go to hell. Andrea was completely captivated by these extreme teachings. Their fourth son, Luke, was born on February 15, 1999. This was when things really took a turn for the worse in Andrea's life. On June 16, 1999, Andrea called Rusty at work, and she begged him to come home. And he did, and he found her shaking involuntarily and chewing on her fingers. The next day, she was hospitalized after she tried to commit suicide by taking an overdose of trazodone, which is a medicine used to treat depression. She was admitted to the Methodist Psychiatric Unit and was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. She was released on June 24th, and she was prescribed an antidepressant. But once she got home, she discontinued the use. She did not take that medicine. And she began then to self-mutilate, and she refused to feed her children because she felt that like they were eating too much. She thought there were video cameras in the ceiling, and she said that the characters on the TV were talking to her and her children. On July 25th, 1999, she put a knife to her neck and she begged Rusty to let her die. She was again admitted for psychiatric treatment and was prescribed Haldol, which is a strong antipsychotic drug. She was then diagnosed with psychosis and postpartum depression, but her condition improved with this medicine and she appeared temporarily stabilized. So Rusty moved the family out of the bus and into a house in Clear Lake City, which is another Houston suburb to the southeast of Houston. And this was to help Andrea's health to keep improving. Now, Andrea's first psychiatrist, Dr. Eileen Starbranch, urged Rusty and Andrea not to have any more children as it would guarantee future psychotic depression. However, in March 2000, Andrea became pregnant with their fifth child, and she stopped taking the Haldol. On November 30th, 2000, Mary was born, and Andrea was coping with being a mom of 5 and adjusting to life with a newborn in the house again. But on March 12th, 2001, her father died, and she declined rapidly. Her psychosis returned. She stopped talking, she refused liquids, she mutilated herself, she wouldn't feed Mary, and she also frantically read the Bible. She was admitted to Devereaux, Texas Treatment Network in Lake City, Texas, and this is when she came under the care of Dr. Mohammed Saeed. She was treated there from March 31st to mid-April and gave her medicine, but he refused to give her Haldol. However, she was re-hospitalized there on May 4th, about 2 weeks after she was discharged from the first time, because she told her mother-in-law that she had filled a bathtub because she might need it. They were worried she might commit suicide. They never feared for the children. They never thought their children were in danger. And it was then that Dr. Saeed prescribed Haldol for Andrea. Andrea was released again 10 days later, but Dr. Saeed still cared for Andrea as an outpatient. Dr. Saeed discontinued the use of Haldol on June 4th because he said she didn't seem psychotic. Her condition kept worsening, and Rusty took her back to Dr. Saeed to get Haldol, but Dr. Saeed refused, and he also refused to return her to the hospital. This was only 2 days before the drownings. However, Dr. Saeed said that Andrea should be supervised around the clock and she should not be left alone with the children. Rusty's mom and Andrea's mom would take turns going to Andrea's house while Rusty was at work to help with the kids. 16 days after Andrea stopped taking the Haldol, on June 20th, 2001, Rusty left for work like any other day, 8 o'clock, and his mother was due to arrive in an hour after he left, and he figured the hour was no big deal, even though it went against the doctor's orders. He decided that he wanted to start to kind of wean Andrea off of having supervision around the clock, and that hour would be part of that weaning process. Now this part is intense, so if you want to skip ahead, please feel free to do so. Andrea then proceeded to fill the bathtub with water, and beginning with Paul, she systematically drowned the 3 youngest boys. Then she placed them in the bed and covered them up. She then drowned 6-month-old Mary, and as she was doing this, her oldest son, 7-year-old Noah, caught her and asked her what was wrong with Mary. And then he ran away, but Andrea caught him and forcibly drowned him. She left him in the tub and carried Mary to the bed and laid her in the arms of one of her brothers. She then called the police, telling them she needed an officer, but she would not say why. And then she called Rusty at work and told him that he needed to come home right away. He asked if the children were hurt. She said yes. He asked how many of them, and she said all of them. Andrea confessed to drowning her children. She said she was not a good mother and her children weren't developing correctly, and that she needed to be punished and the children needed to be saved. And she believed by killing them, she was guaranteeing their spot in heaven before she ruined that opportunity for them. She was convicted of murder at her first trial in 2002 and sentenced to life in prison. However, a second trial found her not guilty by reason of insanity, and that was in June 2006. She is currently in a state mental hospital in Kerrville, Texas. Now, this was a very controversial case in the United States. The public opinion on this case shocked a lot of people. 5 babies lost their lives that day, and people knew that, and they agreed that Andrea was guilty. However, a lot of people, especially women, found themselves being able to sort of relate to how that could have happened, and also how Andrea was let down by the medical community. She was repeatedly hospitalized for her suicide attempts and her catatonic states where she wouldn't eat or drink or feed the kids. But if you were paying attention to those dates before, they were all, these were about 2 weeks apart until the day she drowned her children. And from what I could find in the research, this was because of their insurance. Their health insurance was only allowing for and paying for 10 days of treatment. And that's why she was repeatedly sent home. And I believe, according to her doctor's testimonies and notes, they all agreed that and knew that she was a very sick woman, with one of them saying she was one of the sickest women that doctor had ever met. But they thought it would be her taking her own life, since she never indicated to anyone that she was going to take her children's lives. However, she admitted that she had been planning their deaths for 2 years, that these thoughts of killing her children had consumed her for 2 years. And she admitted this while she was in prison, after she was on meds and getting therapy. But she never told any of her doctors, her therapists, her psychiatrists, or her husband, nobody, about any of these thoughts. There's so many what ifs to this case. What if Rusty was more attentive? What if their religious views weren't so rigid? What if she was allowed to just continue the Haldol because that was the only medication that seemed to have any impact on her mental health? What if Rusty just followed the doctor's orders and didn't leave her alone with the kids, waited for his mom to get there, made his mom come the hour earlier? But in my opinion, is if she couldn't be left with the kids, then why wouldn't that constitute a longer inpatient stay at a mental health facility? It didn't make sense. How could she go back to being a normal mom with a normal life to her kids without that intervention? What if they followed doctor's recommendation and not had any more kids? But the trigger was that her father died 4 months after Mary was born. There were a lot of factors that played into this, and it's an awful tragedy. And now that Andrea has been on meds and reportedly doing better health-wise, she's been mourning the loss of her family and her children. If there was anything positive to come out of this at all, I would say it was the awareness of postpartum depression and how it's not always as simple as a new mom having the baby blues. Andrea she did have a very rare disorder, since hers was postpartum psychosis, which caused the hallucinations and the delusions, but postpartum depression is a little more common, with up to 20% of new moms suffering from it. In fact, because of Andrea's struggle with this illness and lack of awareness of it, her attorney, George Parnham, and his wife, Mary, they established the Yates Children Memorial Fund. And this helps teach medical professionals how to detect symptoms of depression in new moms. In fact, the Parnhams were behind what became known as the Andrea Yates Law, which Texas legislature passed in 2003. Andrea now makes arts and crafts that are sold, but the people buying the artwork don't know that it's specifically done by her, but the money that is made from selling her art goes directly to the Yates Children Memorial Fund. This fund also offers mental health screenings to low-income mothers, so in this way, Andrea may be able to prevent another tragedy from happening. The Yates family tragedy continues to horrify and shock the public, and that will never change. But now, with all the awareness, hopefully this will never happen to another family. Thank you all for watching, and I would love to hear your comments about this case. I also want to say that all of this information that I got is what I've researched. It's what I found on the internet. It's what I found by reading different websites. So if I got anything wrong, please comment below and let me know so I can correct anything. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to be the first to know when another one comes out. If you also don't forget to hit the like button. But until next time, stay sweet, stay safe, and stay kind. Bye, y'all.